I would like to really break your immersion. I left this room. I know that I make it painfully obvious on the Zealand YouTube channel that I travel the world at times, and you see my Zealandisms from all over the world, although I don't even know why I'm pretending to be Zealand anymore. It's pretty obvious that we're two different people. But I will continue to try and ride the Zealand train for clout as long as possible. I honestly think I've done a really good job replicating his background. But yeah, I left this room. That's the point. Not the fact that I'm not Zealand, but the point is I left this room. I went outside. I went to a game, a match, if you will, over the weekend. And I just had some thoughts about it, right? Because I am somebody that tries to be a realist, right? I try not to be overly optimistic. I try not to be a hype beast for anything. And MLS has improved a lot since I got going, but it is also certainly not there yet. So if you would allow me to shit on MLS for a second, as much as it is a league that I do a podcast around, at least in part with Julian Gressel. If you've not listened to Player Manager, got to get the plug in for Zealand's podcast. Of course, I'm not on that, but what can you do? We'll grind our way to the top, leeching off of his success one video at a time. No, but MLS is not a league that I hate carte blanche, although I do hate certain things about it. And one of the things that I hate is that it persists with teams that just don't seem to have a particularly bright future. And I say that, I'm dropping into this, and I feel like I need to drop a million disclaimers so people don't think I'm being mean to particular people. I don't dislike anybody that works at the club I'm about to talk about. I don't have an issue with them. And I think there are a ton of people that are working at this club that are doing all the things to be successful and believe that they're going to be able to be successful, or at least, doing their utmost. For example, the hospitality team or whatever I was interacting with. But the game I went to was the Hudson River Derby. Okay, that is New York City FC against New York Red Bulls. It is a game that I made, Zealand made a long YouTube video about. One of his first serious kind of travel documentary style video. And, if I may say so, it ended up being quite awesome. But I made that Zealand made that video at NYCFC. That's where the game was played. Match ended up being super boring, right? But it was a fun video, fun experience, and the atmosphere at NYCFC was great. And then there's kind of the flip side of it, which is the match that I went to at New York Red Bulls. I was invited by a friend. He had some extra tickets to the game, and so I was able to go. And it was Saturday night. They were doing fireworks after the game. Big rivalry. Both teams are good. Both teams are set to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. And, it was maybe 60, 70% full. And that just makes me sad. It just makes me sad to watch. I'm actually just made uncomfortable. I am made uncomfortable by sports teams that are just not well supported. I'm not a hater. Right, I don't make fun of those sports teams. Maybe this is my own little bit of insecurity because my baseball team's the Tampa Bay Rays, and if you know American sports, the Tampa Bay Rays get shit on for not having a great fan base all the time. Of course, I'd be the one to sit here and tell you that, well, it's not in Tampa. It's like an hour and a half away from where I grew up, and not a lot of people live around where the stadium is relative to the other Tampa. I can come up with a million excuses, but I have been a part of a fan base that has been shit on for not having particularly great fans. And in very American fashion, they've threatened to move the team, But New York Red Bulls doesn't necessarily have that same excuse, right? Their stadium is right near where the New York Giants and the New York Jets play, two NFL teams that certainly don't struggle to put together fan bases. It might be in New Jersey across the river from New York, where I and Zealand both live. Just a coinky-dink little coincidence there. But we both live in New York, and across the river, you go over to New Jersey, and it's about an hour on the train, right? Kind of a subway public transit sort of situation, and you end up getting to the stadium. So, it is annoying to get to, but it takes probably 20, 30 more minutes than getting to where NYCFC plays. So it's not completely out of striking distance, but it's just completely out of the realm of consideration in New York City itself. It's in a beautiful little part of New Jersey called Harrison. There's apartments all around the stadium, and it just didn't really capture me. Now I feel terrible also for the fans of New York Red Bulls because I sat near some. right? And they're yelling about every play and every call, and they're booing people, and honestly, I've kind of been that guy. But I think that the situation around New York Red Bulls and that it is just not a particularly well-attended team is a situation that infects a few MLS clubs. But there is such a contrast between those MLS clubs and the other ones that are crazily well-supported. Right? Obviously, this is all growing. And to be perfectly honest, nobody has any idea if MLS in the experiment that it has undertaken to try and create organic, authentic local fan bases, if it's going to work, right? Because in the vast majority of the world, those fan bases have just always existed since the sport existed, right? But as I've documented in videos, Zealand's documented in videos, it's going to get exhausting doing that. As Zealand's documented in videos on his channel, there was that gap in the United States where nobody cared about soccer for about 50 years. And it's like trying to teach somebody how to walk again or something. I don't know. The United States has amazing fan culture. It exists. It is great. Just to watch some college football games on a Saturday, like American college football, and you'll see 115,000 seat stadiums with drunk dudes named Thad just going absolutely buck wild. They've been in the parking lot since 5 a.m. drinking Bud Lights and like roasting whole hogs, cooking up alligators. You know, I mean, obviously it's a little different than the way I guess a lot of the different fan cultures around the world exist, but it is possible to be an American and also be a ragingly awesome fan. And that exists around certain MLS clubs. Like I know I said that, but go to an El Tráfico between LAFC and LA Galaxy and tell me those aren't rabid fan bases, right? Go stand in the middle of Los Templados with NYFC and tell me that's not a rabid to the point of kind of insanity fan base, right? There's so many good examples. Columbus, right? Atlanta, when they don't completely suck the way they have like a little recently. Charlotte, Nashville, like these teams that have kind of just opened up and the fans just basically accepted it right away. Portland, Seattle, fantastic match experiences, fan bases, vibe, energy, stadiums, right? Lots of soccer-specific stadiums that are being built to be able to handle all of these new teams that are being created. But weirdly, it feels like the older teams kind of getting left behind. Chicago Fire, New York Red Bulls, these teams struggle to put butts in the seats. They're from the old guard. And it feels like New York Red Bulls, it feels like it's an MLS team from 15, 20 years ago that just hasn't progressed at all. And I really don't know what the solution is. I realize this whole video is kind of a granular breakdown of U.S. soccer and U.S. fandom and how maybe to make a change in that, but it's not going to get any better for New York Red Bulls. If you live in New York and want to adopt a team, right, you're going to adopt NYCFC. For one, they're in New York. For two, they're building a soccer-specific stadium in fucking Queens that's going to open in the next couple of years. By the way, in an area of Queens with one of the largest Mexican and largest Ecuadorian populations in the United States, right? So the atmosphere for game day is going to be, similar to going to some sort of South American derby or your Central American derby in a lot of ways, bringing that type of fan culture, the Barada a fan culture, I believe, with the drums and the just crazy shit going on all the time. And that's going to make NYCFC even more attractive because it's just going to be absolutely lively. It's going to be in a ridiculously lively part of New York City. And where does that leave New York Red Bulls? I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I don't know what the solution is. I can posit a guess. Maybe you need to try and find a way to move the team into New York as well. Or you need to rebrand the team to New Jersey. Because you do have a team that is playing a bit into New Jersey that's labeled New York. Now that works for the New York Giants, the New York Jets. But I mean, NFL is a different beast. And let's be honest. And there's no NFL team playing in New York City. They both play in New Jersey. There's no room for a stadium big enough to hold an NFL team in New York City. It just doesn't exist. So if you never knew that, that's why. But there is another option in New York City if you're New York Red Bulls, right? And if you're one of those teams, Chicago Fire being another example, You've got to find a way to put the stadium in the community that's going to care, to get a soccer-specific stadium so that playing MLS games in NFL stadiums almost never goes well because there's 75,000 seats. Only a few football clubs in the world can fill 75,000 seats for 30 home games a season. It doesn't work, right? Like there's a little too many games, and you just need a lot of. Ask Manchester City how hard it is to get 60,000 people to spawn in, even if they didn't exist before, right? And so getting that soccer-specific stadium, but honestly, New York Red Bulls already has a beautiful soccer-specific stadium. I just think it's in the wrong place. And if I'm running New York Red Bulls, I don't know what you could do to try and create that local interest other than rebranding to we're New Jersey, they're New York, But then you risk maybe alienating the remaining fan base because there is still the full kind of ultras section that was there and the passionate people that I was sitting next to. Now, there's lip service for the Red Bulls fans. I will acknowledge the fact that the fans are really displeased with the way Red Bull ownership has been running the club. That's worth mentioning, and that I'm sure is a contributing factor to this whole thing. But while MLS has grown a lot, there are still clubs out there that you can go to a match with and watch a match at where it just doesn't really feel like soccer, like football. It just doesn't feel quite right. It still feels awkward and like MLS from 15 years ago. But there are also matches that you can go, I know because I've freaking been to them in the United States, where it does feel all right. And it does feel like soccer. It does feel like football. It feels natural and exciting and explosive. It's possible. But you just need to study what those other teams have done in launching and figure out how to help out these teams, particularly these older clubs that never quite caught on, help them get to that point. I don't want this to seem like an overreaction either. I just went to a match and had something that I wanted to talk about. And that's what this channel is here for. So congrats, you got MLS stuff today.